Welcome back to Aussie Arovos. As you can see, we're out the front of the shed. We've got the most reliable car in the fleet. We've just got back from MokKA, where we have got a fair bit of gear to go on the patrol. So, we've got a lot of parts here to go on the patrol before we leave for Brisbane in just under a week now. So it's going to be a pretty big push, but we're going to get it done. Let's get this stuff unloaded. We've got a lot of good things here to go on, but we're going to start at the base with the new roof rack. So we've unloaded everything but the roof rack and we have backed the nav into the shed. Now, you're wondering why the roof rack's still on the back of the nav. The most practical car is once again proving its name. It's going to be a workbench. So we're going to assemble the roof rack, assemble everything to the roof rack, and then we're going to use this winch system, which I've set up last night and tested. And we're going to lift everything up all at once and put it straight on the car. Now this is just to make it easier so that obviously we're not having to assemble everything up in the air, and it'll obviously be easier for you guys to see what's going on because it's not on top of a car. Oh yeah, flashy new flat rack. So you might be wondering why we've gone for a new roof rack. Now if you remember my old roof rack, it was a cage style rack, so you've obviously got the edge the whole way around it. Now that means that you can't just sit a rooftop tent flat on top of it. You could try and make brackets to make it fit on top of the cage, but you end up essentially making the whole car a lot higher for no good reason. So we've gone for the MokKA flat rack. Now this is essentially the same outer dimensions as the rack I had, same basic design, just without the sides. So it's still aluminium, still super strong, and most importantly, well, I think it's quite important, it's light. These things are deceivingly light because they're full aluminium. This is going to look really sleek on the car before I put a rooftop on top of it. It is. Yeah. Ooh. No, we need practicality. I've been looking at the car while it hasn't had anything on the roof. I'm like, oh, GQs do look good without a roof rack, but I also need somewhere to sleep. Now, no one can make fun of the lifting system because although it looks like it's kind of rigged up by someone who's not a rigger, everything is rated far higher than what we're lifting. That's rated to a ton. These are a ton each, and we're lifting like, I don't know, 100 kilos. I think it'll be fine. So we've put the roof rack back down on the ute tray now that we've tightened up all the mounting hardware, or at least the horizontal brackets. Still got to set the vertical brackets once it's on to finally fit it. But before we do that, we've got to get into the essential part of this thing, and that is, of course, the party lights. Can't go anywhere without them. So I had these on the old roof rack and I made up some little custom brackets to mount them. Now I'm going to reuse the clamps that go on the roof rack because they're the same between the roof rack I had and this one. And I've got a little mounting hole that I've drilled and nut-serted into them to mount those brackets to. So we're just going to reuse those, mount the rock lights back up. I'm going to run all the wiring before we put the rooftop on so that it's all hidden. Then we'll drop the rooftop on and be good to go. So we've dropped the tent on top of the new roof rack and we're about to bolt everything down. This is what comes with the tent. These are your T-bolts that slot into the rail underneath the tent. Now there's heaps of different rails under there, so there's heaps of mounting options to choose from depending on what rack you're putting it on or how you want to set it up. And then you've got these sort of saddles that go basically under the roof rack, under the tube, and then the bolt drops through, picks up that, and you clamp your whole roof rack down. Now we've got 6 of these saddles, so we're going to put 3 either side, so it'll be well and truly secured. But yeah, the last thing you want is this sort of thing moving around on your roof on the track, so bolt it down properly. So now that we've got the roof rack and the new rooftop up in the air, we're going to drive the workbench out and drive the patrol back in here and drop it on the rails and bolt it down. Nice.
The top hat's about to come
The top hat, the party hat.
I told Dad, once he puts this on, your car's gonna look very different. Like,
yeah, I think it will.
I think when I put mine on, I kept looking back at it every day thinking, I don't know how I feel about this, but eventually you get used to it.
Yeah, well, it was a big enough difference taking just the cage rack off and seeing the car without a roof rack, so it's going to be like the polar opposite, but hey, I need somewhere to sleep, so. Yeah. How you looking there? You sitting down?
Yeah, I think we're touchdown.
Look at that. A party hat. Where should we go first, Patrick? What do you reckon, Brisbane? Yeah. Break it in, short trip, just up the road. That is the rooftop on top of the GQ. First impressions, I'm stoked with it, but before we go too crazy on that, we are going to get this thing bolted down to the roof and get it outside and have a proper look at it. So, with the roof rack and rooftop now bolted down securely to the car, we've also gone and got all the rock lights all wired up again, so everything there's sorted. Next step is going to be to put the awning on. Now we've gone for a 270-degree wingman awning, which is going to go on my driver's side, which is a bit unusual, but that's where my fridge is, so that's the side I'm based out of. So with the awning secured to the side of the roof rack and the rooftop all bolted down, the last step is to put the roof rack on top of the rooftop tent, and then we're right to move this thing out and see how it looks.
It looks full tourer.
Oh wow, it does, you're right. Do we call it tough tourer? Is that,
Yeah,
is that what we're calling it?
It could be.
Yeah, I like that.
I genuinely think it actually works on the car.
Yeah, I love it. I really like it. It's just the right amount of red and black now.
Were you slightly worried about how it would look at all?
Like a bit, but you know when you sort of exaggerate these things in your head, you start thinking it's going to be taller and that and the other, but
Yeah.
once it's actually on there, it's like, nah,
Yeah.
mint. All right, so we've got the car out of the shed, and this is the first time I've been able to actually step back and have a look at how the new rooftop looks on the Patrol, and I am absolutely stoked with it. I think it blends into the car really well. It's only about 50 mil higher than the cage rack that was on there actually was, so not a massive difference. The main thing for me was you see a lot of these rooftops where they just don't really fit the car well. They can be really bulky when they're closed and that sort of thing. I think this really blends into the car well. It goes with the red and black theme I'm going for. It's quite a square rooftop, but so is a Patrol. So it blends in with the body surprisingly well. Yeah, it actually looks a lot better than I thought it would look on there. And I did think it would look all right to start with. So let's get into it and actually see what I've got going on with this thing. So you've seen as we put it on, the roof rack and the rooftop tent. We've also added a few accessories on top of that. So I've added the roof bars to run the MaxTrax on top. So MaxTrax mounting pins and the MaxTrax Extremes up there. Now I've got another couple of those roof bars to mount a couple of 150 watt iTech World panels up there as well. But I'm not mounting those yet as we're in a bit of a push to get this show on the road for Brizzy. And due to the weight, I am going to have to adjust these gas struts, might have to change to a bigger strut. That's just because the rooftops aren't designed to have anything mounted rearward of the struts themselves. So I've run the MaxTrax further up the front. Eventually, once we get the struts done, I'll move the MaxTrax to the back and put most likely two 150 watt panels up the front. So moving around to the driver's side of the car, the other accessory you'll notice is this OCAM 270-degree awning. But we'll have a bit more on that in a minute. First, let's have a look at the tent. So this is the OCAM RTT 8 rooftop tent. Now you might be thinking it's pretty similar to the rooftop that's on Paddy's 80 series, and you'd be right. The difference is his is the prototype and this is the finally released version, so there's a few improvements to have a look at. But before we get into that, let's have a bit of a look back on why I've actually decided to change to a rooftop tent. And what was I running before? So for years I've camped out of a swag. I went from a single swag to a double swag. It was nothing fancy. It was a King's Big Daddy Deluxe swag. So nothing crazy, but it worked. All right, ran the OCAM awning on the Patrol and put the swag under that, and it was all right. The thing that really put me over the edge to a rooftop tent was that every time I'm away camping with Paddy, I'm on the ground covered in dust or mud, depending on what time of the year it is, rolling up a swag that I then have to get on the roof and ratchet strap to the roof rack. Meanwhile, he's already gone, shut his rooftop tent, and he's standing there going, you know, ready to go, warming up his car, waiting. So the setup and pack up time was a major factor. Also, as I mentioned before, dust and mud, it's a bit of glamping, but it is going to be nice to be off the ground. So starting at the outside of the tent, a couple of the features that you might notice that are different from the one that's on Paddy's 80 series are the tent is overall longer, so they've improved the length of it just to give you a bit more room to lay down in. They've also made the windows bigger, which gives you a bit more breathability, a bit more visibility outside the tent, and just seems to open everything up a lot nicer. So up here in the penthouse, we've got an improved mattress, we've got a new anti-condensation mat. We've also got LED lighting installed with a power outlet pocket down the front to run your power through to your car. There's also a heap of pockets on the roof to store everything in, and enough room in here that I can have all the bedding in here and close the tent so I don't have to worry about stashing that away in the car when we're not using the tent. So moving over from the swag to the rooftop tent, I think a couple of the major considerations were that this tent is still pretty lightweight. It's only 68 kilos, so not really a massive weight gain on what I was already carrying with bedding and the swag and everything for that. And also it's pretty slimline on the roof rack. So considering a swag on the cage rack, a fully rolled double swag, I think this will almost be better as far as wind drag goes than a swag was. So with the tent all covered, let's move around and have a look at the new awning. Now, this is an OCAM 270-degree wingman awning. And again, with the tent, a couple of the main features I'm looking at with this are pack up and setup times. Now, being a 270-degree awning, they're a lot easier to swing out than they are to roll out a straight awning. You also get a great deal of coverage and coverage around the back of the car, which now I'm often working out of the back of the car with the drawers and everything. So it's going to be great to have coverage over the rear doors, not have to worry about rain coming in there. So with the new awning set up, I've got heaps of coverage to get to everything I need to in the car. Rear doors open, got heaps of access to the EMU wing, to the fridge there. Can have all our bags and clothes and stuff in this side and still have heaps of access there, and still got room if it is raining, you're not getting out in the rain. Even getting around the rear door of the car to get to the drawers, still under cover of the awning, to get to the back drawer and everything. So yeah, stoked with the wraparound. If you are out in the rain, even the sun, you don't have to get out from under the cover to get to everything in the car. All right, so that about wraps up everything that we put on the car. Now, the real test for all this stuff is gonna be the next few weeks. We're doing a pretty big trip. We're going Brisbane for the four-wheel drive show and then Fraser Island for a week. So all up, we're gonna be living out of this for about 2 weeks straight. So I think it'll be an awesome test to see how the rooftop tent life goes for me and if it's nice to be out of the swag. Until then, we'll see you guys in the next episode.